Hello everyone. In this video tutorial I will show how to use Waves console, and I will show one example how to create, deploy and use smart contracts with Waves console. So let me explain the main use case, the main problem which I will try to solve in this tutorial. Let's imagine that there is a couple, Inal and Lena, and they have, for example, pet. Let's say an elephant. They want to give some amount of money to an elephant every month, but at the same time they want to control all his spending. The best solution for this problem is a multi-signature account. How it will work? For example, an elephant, he has some amount of money and he wants to spend it. He wants to buy something. He has to create a transaction, but this transaction will not work before Lena or Inal sign the transaction. They have to sign the transaction, and only after that it will work and it will be fixed in the blockchain. In this video, we will talk about two main parts. First part is about console overview, create an account there, writing smart contract, compiling it and deploying it. In the second part, we will create transfer transaction. We will sign it by Elephant. We will share the transaction with Inal or Lena. We will sign transaction by the second private key from Inal or Lena, and we will send the transaction to the network. So let's start. First of all, you can find the console at demo.wavesplatform.com. You can use in the menu and open console here, or just use the URL demo.wavesplatform.com/example/console. So what is the console? This works like usual JavaScript console, but there are few differences. First difference is that Waves object is already defined, and you can use this object as it's said in the documentation. So you can see all methods, all variables, constants, and so on. Also, there are some helpers. You can find some helpers here. For example, you can find examples of each transaction as an object, as a JSON. And there are some interesting things, like you can change them to the dark or to the light. Also, you can use every and any function which is available in your browser. For example, you can use fetch, you can make AJAX requests, you can use anything. Also, you can load libraries, but to get more information, just write help and you will see that there are libraries and you can load it and so on. There are a lot of opportunities and there are a lot of use cases of this console. But first of all, I want to note that there is an FAQ, and there are a lot of examples and description of this use case, which I'm describing right now. So let's start. First thing we want to do is to create an account. There is an example how to create account from existing phrase here. If we have already seed phrase, we can use method from existing phrase, or we can create new account. Let's create new account for elephant. This elephant account variable, there are a few fields. There is an address, there are key pair, private key, public keys, and there is a seed phrase. Great. We will attach to this account smart contract. So how to write a smart contract? The best way, of course, is to use an IDE. There is a Waves IDE. For example, you can see the documentation. It describes what is a smart contract on Waves platform, how it works, what is a smart account, what is a smart asset, and so on. Also, there are a few examples of smart contracts, and there is also a multi-signature account, multi-signature smart contract. But this multi-signature is different. There are a lot of ways to write a multi-signature smart contract. For example, there are 2 of 2, 3 of 3, 2 of 3, and so on. In our use case, we will write different smart contract for multi-signature because we need to check that every transaction has a signature from Elephant and second signature from Inal or Lena, not just 2 or 3. If the transaction has signatures from Inal and Lena, it should not work. So it's not simple 2 or 3. So let's dive into smart contract. There is an example of smart contract here. Before we start, we have to define public keys, Lena public key and Inal public key. It's just plain JavaScript variables, as we can see. And here it is. It's a smart contract. There's a script body variable here. And let me explain. There are 3 variables, Lena public key, Inal public key, and Elephant public key. This construction will be replaced with value of variable. So when we run this code, we will see that this, for example, this public key will be here. So we define 3 variables, and there is a match construction. What is it? So we can try to find it in the Waves documentation. It's available on docs.wavesplatform.com. So there is a developed API section, and we can find there language structures. And we can see here pattern matching. There is a small description, and let me just explain it in a few words. How it works. We just check the type of transaction. So if this transaction is data transaction, run this code. If this transaction is any other type, run this code. We made it to let an elephant create data transactions without second signature. So he can set some data to his account without signature from Inal or Lena. All other types of transactions should be signed from Inal or Lena. We made it for one reason. I will explain it a little bit later. So let's run our code. We defined public keys, so we just can define script body variable. Let's see the result. As I said, there is a public key, there is a value of variable, and it should work. So let's compile it. To compile it, we have to run our method called waves.api.node.utils.script.compile, and note that there is a wait function because this method returns promise. To work with promises in JavaScript like synchronous functions, we have to use a wait keyword. So let's run this code, and now we can see the value of compiled script. Yes, it's a base 64 compiled script. Great. Now we have to deploy this smart contract. First of all, we have to define JavaScript plain object with some fields. There is an example of setScript transaction in the helpers variable, and as you can see, there are a few fields: fee, script, sender public key. It's main and necessary fields. So let's try to override the values of setScript example. We have to override script, sender, and sender public key. Let's run this code and let's see the result of this code. Yes, our compiled smart contract, address of an elephant, and sender public key. Great. Now we have just plain JavaScript object called setScriptObj, and we will create an instance of transaction wrapper. Transaction wrapper is a class defined in Waves API. You can create instance of any type of transaction. You have to call Waves tools create transaction and to pass two variables. First argument, it's a name of transaction, and we can use waves constants dot setScript tx name. And second argument, it's a JSON representation of our transaction. In our example, it's a JSON representation of setScript transaction. I call it JSON, but it's plain JavaScript object. So let's run this code and let's see the setScript transaction. Yes, great. We have an object with some methods. And the most important thing here is method called addProof. setScript transaction and all transaction wrapper instances have addProof method. We can pass to the addProof method private key, and it will add signature from this private key. So we just run this code, and now we can get the plain JSON of the transaction wrapper back, and we can see it in the txJSON variable. Yes, and there is a chain ID, it's a test net. There is one proof, it's a proof from an elephant. There is a script value, sender public key, and there is a JSON representation of setScript transaction with timestamp, type, and version. So now we can send this transaction to the network. So to do it, we have to call method raw broadcast and pass our transaction. And again, note that there is a wait function, there is a wait keyword because this function is async. So let's run this code, and we will get an error because negative waves balance for this account. So we can get some testnet waves at testnet.wavesexplorer.com, and let's try to use facet here. Put our address, say that we are not bots. Oh, great. He thinks that I'm bot. Yeah, great. So let's submit it. So now we should get some waves, but it's a blockchain. We have to wait before it will be applied. Yeah, we see a transaction. Now we should have 10 waves. So let's run our code again, and now it should work. This is our code. So let's set script result. We see the ID of transaction. Let's run it. Yeah, now it's on the blockchain. We see our script. We see that this transaction is type 13 script, and we see that the sender is this account. Great. Now we have smart account because we attached smart contract to our account. Great. We finished with first part. Now we have smart contract, we deployed it. So how to use this smart contract and this account now? It's a very important question. Let's try to dive in. First of all, every time when we want to send some money, Elephant has to create a transaction. And again, we will create plain JavaScript object, transfer transaction object. We will override the default values of transaction example, of transfer, recipient, amount, sender, but I think that we have to override the fee field also, because if we have smart contract, we have to pay additional fee. If we have smart contract on our account, we have to pay additional fee. By default, it's 100,000, but we will pay more. We have to add 400,000. So now fee is 100. We will add, and our transaction should look like this. So let's create an instance of, let's just create a plain object, and let's create an instance of transaction wrapper using this JSON, and let's add proof from elephant again as with setScript transaction. And again, let's just get JSON from this transaction wrapper, and as we can see, there is a proof, there is amount, and there are a lot of other necessary fields. Now, Elephant has to send this JSON object to Inal or Lena, and they have to add their signatures, or at least one of them has to add signature. There are a few ways. For example, he just can copy JSON from here and send it using any messenger, or maybe he can send it using our data transactions. So what is a data transaction? You can find the data transaction description in the documentation. Data transactions allow to attach some values to an account. There are four different types of values you can attach: integer, boolean, binary array, and string. We can save JSON as a string and attach it to our account. So how we can do it? Let's see the example. First of all, we have to define an array of data of key value pairs we want to attach. And in this array, we will store the key of value, the type, and the value. We will store our transfer transaction JSON just like as a string. And we will set the key as payment, date, and cake. We see that elephant wants to buy cake. So we define this variable data. And as before, for transfer transaction, for subscript transaction, we override our example of data transaction and we set field data, we set fee. As I said before, we have to pay additional 400,000 wavelets. We add sender field and sender public key. So let's create data transaction object. It's just a JSON with necessary fields. So again, let's create an instance of transaction wrapper. Let's add proof from elephant, and let's see the plain JSON of our transaction. Okay, great. There is a data, there is one proof, there is a sender public key, timestamp, type 12 for data transaction, version 1. And again, let's use method raw broadcast to send it to the network. Great, it should work, and now we can see the ID of transaction. We can try to find it in Waves Explorer. For testnet, note that we will use testnet Waves Explorer. So we see that the data attached to an account. Now, Inal or Lena, they just can open the API, so open the Swagger. For example, there is tastenodes, wavesnodes.com. They can try to find method called address/data/address. They can take address of elephant, try it out, and they will see the value of transaction. So they can get plain JSON object from data transaction, and they can add their proof and send it to the network. Of course, if they agree with elephant's pending. So let's try to do it. There is another console. In this console, I already defined Inal account. He has private key, he has seed phrase, and so on. And as you can see, this public key 73Y, it should be same like here Inal pub key 73Y. So now let's sign here our transaction. I copied it. I can copy the JSON representation from here. And let's, for example, txJSON. Let's call JSON parse. Oh, txJSON has already been declared. So let's use txJSON1. txJSON1, and we see that there is an object with all necessary fields and with one proof from elephant. Now we just have to sign this transaction with private key of Inal and send it to the network. So let's use examples from our FAQ. So to create an instance of transaction, we use create transaction function. So transfer transaction, and we will pass here txjson1, and the type is transfer tx name. Okay, great. Let's try to run. Oh, asset ID should not be empty when we run this command. So we can take JSON1 asset ID, fee asset ID, I think. No, asset ID we need. Yeah, now it works. So now we have transfer tx. Yeah, great. So let's try to sign this instance of transaction wrapper with private key of enal. So let's enal account key pair private key. Now we have transfer transaction, and now we can get the JSON of this transaction. At least we can try to see. So transfer tx JSON, and just get JSON from here, and let's check it out. Let's check it out, and we see amount, address, and we also have two proofs. We have two proofs, and we can at least try to send it to the network. So this transfer tx we can use, and transfer tx result we can send it to the network. Transfer tx result, and it says that it works. So now we can go to the testnet waves explorer again, check the transaction. Yes, we have sender, recipient, we sent 0.1 waves, and we did it with two proofs. So in this example, I tried to show how to create an account, how to sign transactions, how to set script to the account. I mean, how to create your account smart, how to compile script, how to deploy it. So if you have any questions, welcome to our official forum, forum.wavesplatform.com. So now I think it's over. Thank you.